Please welcome Dr. Richard Munang. Over to you, Dr. Richard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica, for that introduction, and thanks to everyone who is listening in today, and the organizers of this amazing Next Leaders Africa Summit, which I would rather call it the Now Leaders Africa Summit. What I would like to do is, and I will appreciate if everyone can listen through very carefully, because I'm coming after Salam, which has given the mega trends of the continent. And I see a lot of questions that are popping up on what can be done for others. Please listen through very carefully. This is actually a very crucial moment, not just for this summit coming now, but for us to interrogate ourselves and actually understand where we've gotten it wrong and how we can right the wrongs to ensure that we move in the right direction. And you will hear throughout my discussion in the next 20 or 25 minutes or so, crowded with African proverbs because we have them in abundance. A bird that flies over the earth and lands on an anthill is still on the ground. This African proverb speaks of one thing. It speaks of ambition. When you talk of transforming Africa in a decade and raising 1 million young leaders who will create lasting change in Africa by 2030, it doesn't get any bigger than this. 20 years ago, on the streets of Washington, D.C. in America, is when we last saw 1 million people gather towards a shared cause. And that was the 1 million man march that is recorded as the largest civil rights demonstration in history. Your aspirations today stand shoulder to shoulder with such historically grand events that are landmarks on the route of emancipation of Africa and friends of Africa globally. And just as a man with too much ambition cannot sleep in peace, we cannot afford to rest easily until we are sure that no one goes to bed hungry, because we're speaking today, 257 million Africans are going to bed hungry. We cannot rest easily until there is a means of income for the 12 million youth that graduate into the labor market without jobs and get disenfranchised into joblessness. We cannot rest in peace until we are sure that our economies are no longer 20 times less productive. And we cannot rest at ease until we are sure that we are no longer the most vulnerable region of the entire globe to the changing climate. And this will be the indicators of transformational leadership that we espouse. It is with great anticipation for success towards transformational leadership that I speak before you today. And I speak like a farmer, because I grew up in a home where my parents were peasant farmers, and they are still today, who plants a seed in bare ground, but with confidence that the bare ground will be turned to green leafy and lush gardens in a few months. I speak like a teacher. Yes, I'm a trained teacher, and I understand that a teacher who toils in the classroom, but with joy and confidence that is shaping those who will change tomorrow for the better. And of course, I speak like prophets will do, but I'm not one, but confident and without contradiction, because I want to speak today with honesty, because honesty is the only way we can ensure that transformational values-based leadership can happen in the African continent. Anything less than that will be good and sweet music to our ears. From the end of February, as we're speaking today, Africa, like the rest of the entire globe, has been under the attack of the COVID-19 pandemic. Beyond just being a health crisis, this has become an economic emergency, threatening to sink Africa further into vulnerability. As we speak, the region's GDP will shrink by 5.1%, and up to 50% of all jobs in the continent are being wiped out. And as we read of trillions, the rate of trillions of emergency stimulus being issued by other countries across the world to buffer their respective economies and ensure that the citizens can actually be resilient to these health crises we are facing today. it is also fair for us to also understand, and this is also a reminder that most of the critical lessons, as we've seen under the COVID-19, is that if your fundamentals are not right, you will never get it right. And that you must be able to bail out yourself in times of crisis. And if you only wait for others to do it for you, you might never get it right. It therefore means Africa cannot afford to externalize solutions to her challenges anymore. Because when the going gets tough, everyone retreats to take care of their own. That is a fact. I can't lie to you. And no amount of flowery speech or eloquence will change this fact. We must face it head on. And this is the main reason why this gathering today is not only important, but it's fundamental and calls for transformational leadership that we must all espouse. But the question we must answer today is, what kind of leadership do we need? And who is responsible for that leadership? Because most of the time we discuss as if someone else is responsible to lead. I will start by quoting scriptures, where in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 9, we are reminded that what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. And there is nothing new under the sun. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a keen look at history gives us the answer. In the early 1950s and 1960s, as the clamor for self-determined rule reached fever pitch, there arose self-appointed men and women, people who espouse values of boldness, of unshakability, of unity, of dedication, values of selflessness and fidelity to a struggle to liberate their people. What was then their vision and what I call today an unborrowed vision? A calling they had to execute. Their every move was governed by a laser-sharp focus and clarity of purpose, clarity of vision to win independence for their people. No amount of persecution, no amount of lack or threats would stand in their way. They did it not for themselves, but for their countries and continent, from the western part of Africa to the eastern part of Africa, from the central part of Africa to the southern part of Africa and to the northern part of Africa. They were joined ideologically in the struggle by timeless values of selflessness, timeless values of kindness, and timeless values and character of humility, not materialism, not selfishness, not jealousy, and not the greed that we are engulfed in today. It is this group of people who ultimately took the honor of being called our founding fathers, and whose memory and legacy remain indelible in the chronicles of leadership today, whether we like it or not. What they did was selflessly standing for Africa's cause, using what they had. They never complained that there was no money. They never complained that they were never supported. They did not postpone this call for a day in the hope of elusive perfection. This is the foundation of values-based leadership that we must all identify with and champion wherever we are. No more excuses, no more blame game, no more theatrics, and no more complaining, because complaining is not a strategy, and blaming others. Today, 60 years later, we are called to take this lesson a notch higher, and it all starts with you and me. It starts with you and me, and to all the over 1.2 billion citizens, including you and me in the continent, looking at ourselves in the mirror and reflecting deeply and answering these three fundamental questions. The first question: what do I have to offer in solving the known challenges of Africa today? Not someone else, you. And the second question: what can I do with what is accessible to me to make lives of fellow citizens better? And the last question: are you willing to take steps down this solutions pathway? Just as our founding fathers, answering these questions hold the key to discovering your own unborrowed vision, what you can do. Your purposeful pursuit, because the purpose of life is to be useful. Your usefulness in turning Africa's challenges into opportunity that will catapult you to become a transformational leader that is fit for purpose. And I use the word fit for purpose intentionally. From post-independent Africa to date, we have deviated from these values that won our independence in the first place. Leadership. And I really urge you people to listen very carefully, please. Leadership has increasingly become a term used in the context of assuming positions of power and authority. It has consistently been used not only in leading, but assuming positions of power and authority, be it in government, be it in organizations and many other forums. Even in WhatsApp groups today, people use the opportunity to say they are mean groups to dictate. It is a term synonymous with privilege. Leadership is used today to mean privilege, the privilege to self-indulgence. That is wrong. The privilege of self-seeking. That is wrong. The privilege of self-serving. That is wrong. The privilege of self-actualization. That is wrong. The privilege of self-preservation. And that is wrong. But had this been the spirit of our founding fathers, I guarantee you today we would not be where we are today, and we will still be under colonialism. Though they drop the ball soon after independence, we have an obligation to learn from their successes and also from their failure. We have an obligation to learn from their successes. Firstly, that leadership is about selflessness. Get that today, please. Leadership is about selflessness, to touch many lives with what you have. Not only your life and not only your family life, but the lives of citizens, regardless of tribe and regardless of country. That leadership is about clarity of vision, of intended progress. That leadership is about taking personal responsibility, not feeling entitled. And that leadership is not about positions or titles. And more importantly, that leadership is about your passion to touch other people's lives, not only yourself and your family. A clear understanding of personal responsibility to the continent's well-being and progress is what we all need to become transformational leaders. And for this, I will leave you with 5 points for you to ponder on, because the responsibility starts with you and me first, not someone else. And the first point is put within an African proverb: rain beats a leopard's skin but does not watch at its spots. This African proverb is a reminder that fundamentals do not change. Fundamentals are non-negotiable. If you tell a hungry child that you gave him or her food yesterday, that means nothing to that hungry child today. In scripture, when the children of Israel were led out of slavery into the promised land, this was a transition from deprivation to abundance. While we may not all agree with Moses' leadership style, what we cannot miss is the fact that he led his people towards economic prosperity. This has been the foundation of leadership since time immemorial. Today, what we must ask ourselves is, with the changing climate and the adversity in which Africa finds itself today, whether we're talking poverty, we're talking disease, we're talking youth unemployment, how do we use what we have, firstly, as individuals, to unlock economic opportunities out of these challenges we face? If you cannot be able to look at how you can turn challenges to opportunity to better people's lives, that's not values-based leadership. We live in an area of competitiveness, global competitiveness, market economies, and this means that the sustainability of anything you do, whether it is a project you are running, the sustainability of the initiative you undertake, no matter where you undertake it, is dependent upon how successfully it can be executed as an enterprise. To you, this means that any cause you are passionate about, it doesn't really matter whatever thing you are doing, but doing something that you are passionate about must be one that touches others' lives, and one that can be implemented in an enterprising way. And what I mean by this is very simple. Prioritize solutions through what you can do, and especially look at Africa continent with abundance. It has sectors that hold unique competitive advantages can enable everyone to solve problems. You must not have a position to be a solution provider. Ladies and gentlemen, in Africa, clear global abundance is in clean energy. If you look outside where you are seated today, you'll see, if you are in the continent of Africa, 365 days of sunshine, coupled with very high post-harvest losses that we're seeing in the continent. Food import, what, 35 billion US dollars, place us primarily to top no less, especially when we combine post-harvest losses that are worth 48 billion US dollars to top no less than 83 billion each year, when you juxtapose the 35 billion that is importing unemployment and exporting employment. Simple solar dryers that youth across the continent today, inspired through the spirit of innovative volunteerism, are showcasing the solutions to the problems that we so much talk about are with us. We externalize them always because we do not believe in what we do. Lack of self-belief is a problem that have abdicated values-based leadership to be leadership that is synonymous to privilege that have not actually worked for the past 60 years. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, anything you do should be about to touch lives. What we must always understand, what it will take for each and every one of us to be able to do things that touch lives, building on already existing enabling policies that are in every country, is to come down from our mental high horses that tell us that having a certificate entitles you to a job, and to realize that the certificate actually bequests you to take responsibility to solve problems. That takes me to my second point. And this African proverb puts it in perspective. You have little power over what is not yours. The first thing you must answer yourself honestly is to determine what you really have. And what you really have is yourself. In the context of our discussion today, by yourself, I mean your skills. It doesn't matter how tall you are, how short you are, how big or small, which country you come from. What distinguishes you when you stand on that stage anywhere in the world is what you can offer, and I call it value. If you cannot bring value to the table, you will not be accepted in that table. You will never be told this. It's what you can offer that matters. It's not your tribe. It's not your country. It is what you can offer. We are all joined today by people from different countries and from different creeds. What brought us together here is to talk about solutions to the challenges we face with leadership. But what is more important is the value we came all together today to offer. So your skill is your biggest premium. And if you don't leverage on your skill, then definitely you cannot drive values-based leadership. And that takes me to my third point. If you pick up one end of the stick, you will also pick up the other. This African proverb reminds us that we must take our time to understand issues in their entirety. Context matters, and I have said this always. And therefore, we must never ever subscribe or ascribe to narratives or dimensions presented to us without questioning, interrogating, and critiquing them. There is profound power in a narrative. And if you do not have your own narrative, I can tell you for free, you will not make in-depth progress in anything you do. Africa's narrative is not determined based on context, and it's not even determined by you. That's reality. Without critiquing narratives and synthesizing them better to suit context, you cannot make progress. And I say so, and I will take an area in which I have been working on for 11 years. I take climate change. And I say so because while Africa stands as the most vulnerable region to climate change, which simply means that the continent can actually turn the challenges of climate change to opportunities. The discussion from an opportunity perspective is not as high as from the vulnerability perspective. Yes, the droughts, the floods are testament to the fact that climate change is with us today. But we must live with it and turn the challenge into an opportunity. But what has been a failure of narrative is that we've lost from the failure of this narrative to actually start discussing how climate action can be an investment opportunity. The climate action narrative is always choreographed elsewhere. And this is like a corporation, right? Which makes critical investment decisions without input of the majority of the stakeholders. It doesn't work. As a region, we voluntarily ascribe to such narratives without interrogating and coming up with befitting counter narratives. We do not do that. A very typical example of climate change, which I have been in the area for 11 years, and I speak without any fear of contradiction because that's my area of expertise. A very typical example, narrative, as far as climate action in Africa is concerned, is that it is presented as a social issue. It is presented as an issue that if there is no money, nothing can be done. No money, if money no day, we no do no nothing. Because money no day, if they no do and for we, it means say we no do no nothing. But that's not right. The truth is, we have never as a continent explored in details and deeply and expanded on a narrative that in fact climate change is with us. It is manifesting in droughts and floods, plunging people into suffering. But however, climate action can be leveraged as an enterprise and an investment opportunity for the continent. Why do I say so? Because climate action provides solutions that can actually be able to build socio-economic opportunities. That narrative is important. Today, as we know, if you look at the continent of Africa today, the challenge of deforestation driven by charcoal burning, traditionally the approach is prescribed, that is usually prescribed is tree planting. Yes, that's fine, we must plant trees. But on top of planting trees, we must be able to engage young people to start turning challenges into opportunities. If you take waste recovery, provide the most accessible, non-capital intensive, especially for young people, to turn waste into briquettes, to turn agricultural waste into biofertilizer. That will create them opportunities, especially when you take waste recovery to energy. Just in turning waste to briquettes, you're actually going to tap into a 20 billion charcoal industry in the continent today. The policies and enabling are there. And that's what, through the spirit of innovative volunteerism, young people across the continent are demonstrating that it can be done. Profound power in a narrative. And that takes me to my fourth point. And listen very carefully, please. We must liberate on our soft power. One profound African proverb reminds us that a cutting word is worse than a bowstring. A cut may heal, but a cut of the tongue does not. In the context of our discussion today, this proverb underscores the importance of what I call soft power, which is mostly expressed in the content of words, our words especially. And I will just give you one simple example to illustrate this. With the advent of social media, many youth across the continent are influencing their peers through what they share on social media, whether it is Facebook, whether it is Instagram, whether it is Twitter, whether it is LinkedIn, and you name them. From their sharing, from their taste in fashion, to their taste in music, and to their taste in lifestyles that they share on these social media platforms, these youth are influencing each other's choices through social media on a global scale, whether you like it or not. This is a manifestation of soft power that you have in your hands. You sit there waiting for power elsewhere. The power is in your hand. In the not so distant past, let me just give another example. In the not so distant past, about 2 years ago, an international media house, and I will not name it here for diplomatic reasons, slander an African country, and the youth and other social media users launched a famous hashtag, and I will not mention it here, that trended for days, causing the media house to withdraw and apologize for their out of character representation of the said country. This is soft power. This is soft power that you have in your hands. My message to you today is simple. Instead of wasting your soft power, in influencing your peers to things that do not add value. Time has come that you influence each other to become solution providers to start turning Africa's challenges to opportunities. Time has come for you to catalyze alliances of solutions where we all influence each other to take action against hunger and put poverty on a run and prosperity into the cockpit of progress. Time has come for you to become an innovative volunteerism actor. Time has come for you to become values-based leaders, not always complaining and blaming others, but to start showing that selflessness and humility is the best leadership values that you can be able to espouse. And that takes me to my last point. He who runs after good fortune runs away from peace. As you set yourselves to become value-based leaders, starting today, not tomorrow. Values-based leaders, not leadership that is associated with privilege or complaining. As you set yourself to become leaders that are actually solution providers, never look at material gain, but rather look at the lives you will touch. Because if you succeed alone, you are failed. Success is about lifting people from the bottom of the pyramid. Success is about inspiring people so they can usher themselves to action. But when you focus on material, that's where selfishness, that's where greed has actually strangulated Africa's growth today. Material will be a consequence when you solve problems. Material is not an end. Therefore, you must focus on perfecting solutions to make it the most affordable and competitive. And in doing so, ensure to be selfless and work with the willing. Always remember that not everybody will embrace what you do, especially when you are doing what is right. Learn to live with it. Don't fear that someone will steal your idea. Just as no two zebras share the same pattern of stripe, no two people share the same fingerprint, even from the same household. Then no one can replicate your passion, because it is passion that implements, not positions. Passion implements. Positions do not implement. It is passion. And passion is your new currency of now. And originality in implementing an idea should be what you should focus on. But always strive to be selfless. And know that all of us will live knowing that when our time for judgment will come, we will be asked one question: what did you do with what you had? And what you had is you. This is the essence of values-based leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Munang. I'm provoked. I don't know whether everyone has been challenged the way I'm being challenged. Because right now, I'm finding myself asking myself, have I really done enough for my continent?